So Carrie, your second chance at life came at 31. Still blows me away.
I know.
After experiencing a heart attack, how did that moment reshape your personal life?
Yeah, it changed everything, really. It was in 2009. I was 31 years old. I was on a 60-mile bike ride with friends, which it wasn't unusual for me to be out on a 60-mile bike ride. I was a triathlete. And all throughout the ride, I was experiencing symptoms that at the time I had no idea had anything to do with my heart. As Linda mentioned, heart attacks show up very differently in women than in men. And so I was told later that all of the symptoms that I was experiencing that day were indicative that I was having a heart attack.
Hi there, and welcome to the HR podcast. This is Linda Misagatas
And Cindy Manuel, and we'll be your co-hosts. After spending years working in and with HR, we thought, why not start a podcast to support the important HR community? We believe the way things have always been done isn't necessarily what's going to work in the future. So we're diving into topics that support HR and working women as they navigate the future of work. We're talking about professional growth and also how we can support each other as human beings.
We can't wait to bring you insights from HR experts, thought leaders, and inspiring women who are making a real difference in their organization and communities. They'll share their journeys and tips on balancing work and life in a better way. We're excited to learn alongside you and hope you'll pick up some great takeaways, from tips and tricks to worksheets that you can actually use in your daily life. So grab your favorite beverage
Or lace up your walking shoes and join us for the HR Her Resources podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Her Resources podcast. I'm so excited for this special opportunity to actually be sitting in the same room together.
Yes.
This is so awesome.
It's good stuff.
It is really good. I know we don't get to see each other in person, even though we don't live that far away from each other, but that's the way the world works today, right?
Lived in like different states.
You would think that way. I know.
It's
It's so true. But we are so excited to have you all here. We're going to be talking today about pressing issues facing women in the workplace and beyond. And today our focus is on heart health.
Mm-hmm.
So, and before we jump in and introduce you to our amazing guest, I just want to share a couple of things with you. Did you know that heart disease is the leading cause of death for women in the United States? I didn't know that
until last year.
just until last year when we had Dr. Cooper.
Yeah,
Yes. Got to get Coop's Corner. We got to do
Corner.
it. But in fact, it actually accounts for 1 in every 5 female deaths, which is crazy. And yet, despite the staggering reality, women's heart health is often overlooked, both by the medical community and by women themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it says that studies show that only about half of women recognize heart disease as their number one health threat, and symptoms often present differently than they do in men, leading to misdiagnosis or delayed treatment, which we're going to learn about today with our incredible guest in the studio. And heart attacks in women can look much different too. So beyond the typical chest pain that you typically see with men, it can include things like fatigue or nausea, shortness of breath, and even pain in the jaw or back, which is why awareness and education are so critical. So today we're going to break things down and we're going to learn about Carrie's story, and we're going to talk to you about, what women should be paying attention to. So
happy to have you here.
Me too. So Cindy, I'm going to hand it over to you.
This is Carrie Lehtonen. A few years ago, I remember watching, I think it was, I'm not going to say the news station because I'll say the wrong one, but I was watching a news station, and unbeknownst to me, it was in February, and there was a portion of it that talked about Heart Health Month, and you came on. And your story just touched my heart, first of all. But also, I was shocked because, Carrie, you've always been so active and athletic, and
Yes.
And 31 years old is when this happened. So I was very shocked. So I'm very happy that you're here today with all of us. So Carrie's second chance at life, as I mentioned, came at 31 years old when a blood clot in her coronary artery resulted in a heart attack. Carrie chose to pursue a second career in health and wellness to reduce the impact of heart disease. She attended the Institute for Integrative Nutrition to become a holistic health practitioner. I love that. And went through training to become a registered yoga teacher and educator. Carrie left her nearly 20-year career in human resources, which is where we had met, to focus full-time on running her own business, Firefly Community. Her mission is to help people uncover their passion and live inspired lives. Carrie published her first book, which we love.
That's right. We got honored today.
We got our signed
We got
copy.
our signed. That's right. We got our autograph copies.
Yeah,
so,
and I have already started reading it. Not today, but I had already started reading it. So her book is called Positive Perspectives, just this last year. So welcome to the Her Resources podcast, Carrie.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's great to get to see you both in person after so long.
I know it has been a long time, so it is. That's the nice, fun thing about this podcast too. We get to reconnect with old friends.
So Carrie, your second chance at life came at 31. Still blows me away.
I know.
After experiencing a heart attack, how did that moment reshape your personal life?
Yeah, it changed everything, really. It was in 2009. I was 31 years old. I was on a 60-mile bike ride with friends, which it wasn't unusual for me to be out on a 60-mile bike ride. I was a triathlete. And all throughout the ride, I was experiencing symptoms that at the time I had no idea had anything to do with my heart. As Linda mentioned, heart attacks show up very differently in women than in men. And so I was told later that all of the symptoms that I was experiencing that day were indicative that I was having a heart attack. I first just felt lightheaded, then I felt like I had indigestion, then I had neck and shoulder pain. And this was all stuff that I explained away of, I didn't eat enough before we started riding, or maybe my position on the bike is weird and causing this pain. And it wasn't until about the last 10 miles or so that I started to feel pressure in my chest. And it still wasn't super alarming. It wasn't a sharp pain. It just felt like pressure. And that's what didn't go away. But lucky for me, my friend that I was on the ride with that day didn't take no for an answer when he insisted that we go to the hospital. We waited in the waiting room for about an hour in the ER, and then finally got in to see a doctor, and they ran multiple tests. They were checking all different things, my gallbladder, nothing was indicating anything wrong. And so finally the doctor said, you have a family history of heart, which I always put in my record. And as soon as he said that, I knew that must be what was happening. And I think
must have been scary.
Yeah, I think he saw the change in my face, and he's like, it's probably nothing. We just want to rule it out, but we're going to do a blood test. The blood test showed that my heart was in distress, but they still didn't know why. So the cardiologist had been called. The nurses went into emergency mode to prep me and, sign off all these waivers and get ready for the catheter lab. It turns out I had a blood clot in my coronary artery, and I would not have survived had I not gone to the hospital that night. So
oh my goodness.
I was very fortunate, but yeah, it made me take a step back and think about, is what I'm doing really what I'm meant to be doing in this world? Because, I was doing what I thought I was supposed to want to do. I was climbing the corporate ladder in my human resources career. That's what I went to school for. So that was my only, experience. And I wasn't sure what else to do, but I also was starting to realize, I'm putting myself 110% into this job that doesn't inspire me. So it kind of shifted my perspective of what's important. And I started this long journey of figuring out what that was for me.
That's incredible. One of the things I take away from what Carrie shared with us there is that, and I've had this experience taking my husband into the emergency room, it doesn't matter why we take him to the emergency room, the first thing they do is hook him up to heart monitor and see what's going on there. That's the very first thing that they always do. And if he were to come in presenting with the same symptoms that you were even talking about, we most certainly aren't sitting in the waiting room for an hour. Yeah, you were immediately taken back. They're, strapping you up to heart monitor and doing that. It's fascinating to me that even today, with everything that we know, that is still the case, that women, it's secondary for them to think that maybe it's our heart. So.
And the other thing that struck me, Carrie, in your story is that you kind of tried to explain away, which I know I've done before. You wake up in the middle of the night and you're not feeling quite right, and you're like, I'm okay. We actually had a friend that we worked with at McData.
Little Deb Darby.
Attack. Yeah. And I remember her saying she got up, she took a shower, she was like, trying to kind of explain it away. So
Yeah.
I don't think that's unusual, but how
No.
interesting is that?
Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like, and a lot of women don't realize that heart disease is the number one killer and the number one threat, and that heart attacks present differently. So,
Right.
and we're tend to be caretakers of other people. We don't really pay
So
much
true.
attention to what's going on in our own bodies. So I think that's another thing I try to share when I share my story is just listen to your body and listen to the signals and be your own advocate too when you do go into the hospital.
Absolutely.
And make sure they are checking everything. And because I was lucky too that they just kept testing. They didn't just say, oh,
right.
well, it's not this, so we'll send you home.
Well, and to your
Wow.
point too, is that keeping your medical records updated,
to
right?
date,
Because
yeah.
had they not seen that, who knows how long it would have taken them to actually finally realize that
Right.
it was your heart that was the problem and not, just assume that it was, gastrointestinal, which is what it always seems to be. They think with women, I guess that they must assume our GI tracts are a mess or something because they always assume that's what it's tied to. And so they would have kept looking for things that were non-existent when in fact, here it was your heart that was doing this. So
Carrie, when they looked at your medical history, which relatives had had heart issues and what had they had?
So my father had had 2 heart attacks in his 40s,
Oh.
and both of his parents had heart disease.
Okay.
And then on my mother's side of the family, my grandmother had had minor strokes. So that's also a cardiovascular disease.
Wow.
So
Well,
from both sides.
yeah. So, I mean, really good that they checked your medical records, as you were saying.
yeah.
Linda,
Did it ever cross your mind, though, knowing that you had this history of heart disease in your family, though, because I'm guessing that you made some assumptions that you're healthy, you're an athlete, you're doing all of these amazing things. What would you possibly have to worry about?
Exactly. And I was 31.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
And
You were young.
the cardiologist even said to me, I asked him, I have this family history. When would my, regular doctor start testing me? And he said, probably not until your 40s.
Yeah.
So, it's
Wow.
definitely, it was always in the back of my mind, but I thought I was doing the right things. I was physically active. I ate relatively well compared to the rest of my family.
Yeah.
Right.
Gosh.
No, that is crazy. Well, so what, obviously you kept going and you continued with your human resources career. And then along the line, you started to realize this isn't what I want to do.
Yeah, and as I said, my education had been in human resources too, so I didn't really know what else to do.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
But because of my heart attack, I ended up getting connected with the American Heart Association, so I was learning more about heart disease. And it's through them that I learned that 80% of heart disease is preventable with lifestyle changes. And so that struck me as an opportunity, a positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not all these women and men need to be dying of heart disease. So what could I do to be healthier and also to perhaps help other people?
Yeah.
And I ended up meeting a woman who was a health coach who had gone through a program at Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So I checked it out, decided to go through that program. At the time, I did it more for my own education to learn more about what I could do, and really loved the program. I became a health coach, so I was still working in human resources, as that was my experience, and that was what I was doing. And but I started doing some health coaching on the side. And it was also around that time that I discovered yoga. And that's when everything really came together for me, of the whole mind, body, spirit connection. And also the recognition that stress had a big role in my heart attack, in my life, and how managing that would make a big difference for me, not only my health, but my happiness as well.
Right.
And so I just dove. I never even thought I would practice yoga, never mind become a yoga teacher, but I fell in love with it and just dove into it and went through yoga teacher training. And people that I worked with at my corporate job knew that I had gone through teacher training, so they asked me to teach them a yoga class at work.
awesome.
So I started with
that's
one
awesome.
class that became 2 classes a week. And eventually I started teaching part-time at the local studio that I was practicing yoga at. And just really started doing all of this on the side while I was still working in my corporate job. I had changed jobs just into a more flexible position that allowed me to
do some of
be
these
able to
things.
do these things. And eventually I led my first yoga retreat, and then a few years after that is when I finally took the leap and left my corporate job altogether. I'd already started Firefly Community, but I wanted to focus on it full time. So
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
So Firefly Community, tell us more about the name, because
Yeah.
I love it.
yes, so I believe we all have an inner light within us that tends to perhaps get stifled by the world and by our expectations that we put on ourselves and that others put on us. And so my goal is to really help people tap into who they really are and what they're passionate about, and just so they can lead healthier, happier lives. And there's this quote I really love by Howard Thurman. He says, "Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive." So our motto at Firefly is Ignite, Thrive, Shine. So it's really all around helping people discover, what makes them feel alive, what lights them up, and to be able to bring more of that into their life.
No, that's
You're
fantastic.
such a good example of that. So you're really living what you're preaching, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's very inspirational. And, who knows? Somebody in our community, the Her Resources podcast community, might be in a situation right
Very
now where
similar.
they're like,
Yeah, exactly.
This is really stressful. How can I live more to my values? How can I, shift something in my life to start going more towards the way that you did, Carrie, and really living your values? And
I agree. Well, and real quick, Cindy, before you transition, one of the things I was curious about is you said something that really struck me in that 80% is preventable. And so, right? But I think we, especially maybe in the United States, even more so, we've just accepted the fact that we live in we're stressed, we have to eat unhealthy because it's too expensive to eat healthy.
I don't have time.
I don't have time to exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I don't have time to exercise. It's I don't have time to do these things. Talk about a little bit more about that, because I think that's really helpful. And your story is impactful because you're not somebody who just started, decided one day you were going to be a yoga teacher and now you created a company or a community around that. You were impacted in your life by something that was life altering, and then you moved in that direction.
Yeah,
so
really
maybe share with some people a little bit about that 80% and preventable.
Yeah, and I think you touched on some points of why we get in this trap of, even though it's preventable, still people
what are we
dying
doing?
of heart disease.
Yes, yeah.
And I think the other thing is our Western medicine saved my life, so I have
absolutely yes. Yeah.
However, there's also tends to be this drive of take this medication, and I left the hospital after 4 days after my heart attack with all of these prescription medications, and no discussion about lifestyle.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow.
Not
okay.
at all.
Okay.
And so,
what a miss.
So I had to do my own research, and they even didn't have me go through a cardiac rehabilitation group because they said it's not your demographic.
Because you were so young.
Exactly.
But it doesn't matter. You need to surround yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, plus at 31, you had the heart attack. So
You
clearly, it doesn't matter what demographic. That's right. It happened. Yes, that's right.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I felt like through my own research is where I started to learn more about what I could do to be healthier other than taking medication. And so it took me a long time, but I transitioned slowly into a plant-based diet to
Okay.
help manage and keep my cholesterol levels where they needed to
Yeah.
be. And they were always in the normal range.
Sure.
But, as someone with a family history of heart disease, I had to keep my
Be
LDL
extra careful.
extra
Yeah.
low.
Yeah.
And so I started
Interesting.
working through that through my diet. I was already physically active, so that was something I was already doing.
Yeah.
But managing stress was a big thing for me. And,
That's a
chronic
good
stress
point.
causes
Yeah.
a lot of inflammation in the body. And
Yeah. And
and
you were probably
contributes.
making, like a lot of people might make it, like even me, I might make an assumption that because you were so physically active, well, where's your stress coming from, right? Because you're out there, you're working out, you're doing all of this. Isn't that melting away all your stress, Carrie?
60-mile bike
Yeah,
ride?
right? I mean, doesn't
No
that just
pressure.
solve the problem? So, but my guess is you were probably, because you were an athlete, you were probably putting pressure on yourself and creating stress even around some of the things you were doing there, I would assume. So,
Yeah, that's a good point as
yeah.
well. And I mean, it's lucky that I was physically
Oh
active
gosh,
because
yeah.
post heart attack, I don't have a lot of damage to my heart muscle because my
Okay.
heart was
Good.
strong.
Yeah.
So being
Wow.
physically active was a
Really
good thing.
important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even though I still had the heart attack, it was
Yeah.
important for my heart that my heart was strong. But yes, I mean, we put all these pressures on ourselves
Right.
to,
The
do more, be more,
expectations.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
true. No. What steps did you take to kind of take a step back and reprioritize? Because I think, Cindy, you and I have talked a lot about kind of that being mindful and being present and that sort of stuff. But how do you take that step back? Because we do live in a high pressure world where it is all about,
Absolutely.
more. It's more
And the
stuff.
should and the should and the
Yes,
should,
yes,
right? Yeah.
absolutely.
Like you were saying, I went to college to be an HR
Yeah,
professional, so I
got to
should
climb the corporate
be in
ladder. Yeah,
HR. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
I mean, it's hard. I mean, and that was definitely my personality too. I was very type A, very driven, very
Yeah.
self-motivated. And so it was taking a step back and just thinking about what is really important. And the most important thing is your health, because if you
Yeah.
don't have your health, you don't have
Yeah, what do
anything
you
else.
have? That's true.
So just really taking a step back, looking at that and what would make me healthier? What were things that were better for my mind, body, and spirit? And that was
Yeah.
to get out of the environment I was currently in my job into something that felt more aligned with who I was
Sure.
and what I wanted to contribute. And then, as I said, it was a long journey I had to go through to figure out what else to do.
Right. Yeah.
And
That had to have been really scary too, because we are very rooted in the world of corporate. Cindy, I know you and I talked about how scary it was for you to finally, like, because you've been
make the
talking
leap.
about running your own business for as long as I've known you. Like you've always wanted to kind of venture out and do things different, but that's scary. And so
Yeah.
like, what for both of you, honestly, like what made you maybe find that confidence in yourselves to say, I'm just going to do it.
it was very scary. And to be honest, the last thing that kind of pushed me over the edge and told me it's time
Yeah.
was the universe giving me a message of the company that I was working for was being acquired by another company.
Okay.
And my manager at the time asked me, how interested are you in receiving an offer from this new company? And I'd
Right.
heard some things about the company that was taking over
Yeah.
and that it wasn't a great environment. And I said, I think it's time. I think it's time for me I'd already started my business. It's time for me to just go off and do my own thing. And so that helped me,
Yeah,
to
sometimes the
make
universe
that
sends us
decision.
signs, right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
Because
yeah.
it was scary, of course.
Absolutely.
It helped that I had gotten married the year before, and
Sure,
so I didn't have to
yeah.
worry about
Like
health
insurance?
insurance.
Yeah,
Because health
yeah,
insurance is a really
yes,
big aspect.
absolutely.
So,
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, so you kind of had a similar, because when you
I
finally made
did.
that switch, it was similar, right?
Yeah, so I really resonate with what you're saying. I do think that sometimes you start to make that journey towards what you really want to do, and then the universe gives you signs. And I know that sounds a little woo-woo, but I do feel like all the hard work then meets the woo-woo, and then that's where where the two intersect. It's time. So same situation. A company I loved working for was acquired by a huge consulting company. And I stayed for a few months and found that I wasn't aligned with the values.
Yeah.
And I felt that I was buffering my team all the
Yeah.
time. And so I thought, you know what, it's time. It's time. And my husband, same thing, had insurance. So I thought, what's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work, I'll go find another job. But it is really nice. And it is still stressful in a different way. I'm sure you don't have.
Of course, yeah.
Right, yeah. It's not like all of a sudden you're living in, the paradise or something. I mean, you still are going to have stress, right? Like
Absolutely.
you still have to think about running your business. You have things, obligations,
That's
it's
right.
all.
And
so
to
that,
other people.
but it's probably stress you've chosen, which is a little bit different,
It
right?
is different. And you can kind of like structure it in the way you and I have talked about that, kind of in the way that you want to. So.
Yeah. I like
And it
that.
also, it's very rewarding for me when I lead a yoga retreat and I see someone go through this transformation of getting out of their day-to-day life for a week and focusing on self-care, focusing on themselves, and just to see the difference in when they came in and when they leave. And even though there's a lot of stress in owning your own business and you wear a lot of hats and you have to do some things that you like and some things that you don't like, the reward is just seeing that transformation that happens for people.
That's fantastic.
And I don't know if you feel this way too, Carrie, but when my kids or when my husband are proud of something that I've accomplished, it just kind of puts an exclamation point on the end of I did do the right thing by myself.
I agree.
To go out and to do that.
At the Delta Principle, we are transforming the way you experience change. Have you ever experienced an organizational change where your employees pushed back because it was too much, too fast, or they just didn't understand why they couldn't do things the way they've always done them? What about where communication was non-existent or unorganized, with important updates getting lost in the shuffle, leaving people confused? And have you ever experienced change where morale was at an all-time low because the change felt overwhelming and not aligned with your organization's culture? If you are being asked to lead an important organizational change, especially if you're new to leading change, or if you're just feeling overwhelmed, the Delta Principle is here to support you. We work closely with you as a trusted partner, co-creating real-world solutions to address your unique challenges, and we equip you and your organization for future success. Are you gearing up for your next transformation journey or exploring ways to strengthen your change management skills? Then let's connect. This year, we're thrilled to introduce Leading Change, a training designed for leaders driving organizational initiatives, and Navigating Change, a training tailored to empower teams and adapting to change with confidence. Our coaching and training sessions are fully customizable to meet your organization's unique needs. Reach out today to see how we can partner with you to make your next change a success. You can find us on LinkedIn or by emailing us at info@thedeltaprinciple.com.
So Carrie, tell everybody a little bit more about what is Firefly Community? What do you do? How do they reach you? We'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
It's evolved over time. So I do still do health coaching. So I do have health coaching programs available, but I also focus a lot more on yoga. So I do teach group yoga classes, also events and workshops, and those can be about yoga, but also other topics too, like stress management and nutrition.
Yeah.
And I lead yoga retreats around the world. So I usually do about somewhere between 2 to 5 yoga retreats a year, usually at least one in Colorado and then others in different locations.
That's amazing.
So I've gone back to Costa Rica many times, but
one of
this
my
year
favorites.
I'm going to the Azores, which are islands off the coast of Portugal.
Yeah.
And I have a website, fireflycommunity.com. So that's the best way to see everything that I offer.
Yeah.
We'll put
and
that in
then
the show notes.
I am on social media, so Firefly Community on Instagram, and then Firefly Yoga Community on Facebook.
That is amazing.
And you're on LinkedIn too.
Yeah,
I
on
am on
LinkedIn as well.
well,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
LinkedIn.
right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no, definitely. Well, let's transition just a little bit because I want to talk about this amazing book that Carrie wrote and kind of how that came about as well.
Yeah. Can you give us just a little bit of background? Tell us about your girl and tell us kind of how this all evolved and came about.
Positive Perspectives is life lessons from the shelter dog who became queen. So it's about my dog Ella, who I spent 15 years with between the ages of 28 to 43. So
she went through it
with
all
me
with you.
through
Yeah.
the transition
Wow.
and through all of the changes. And she was always by my side. And fortunately, I had to say goodbye to Ella in August of 2021. She was over 15, almost 16, and had been struggling with degenerative myelopathy and told me that it was time for her to go.
Yeah.
And it was very hard for me, as I'm sure you all can relate to. And I eventually just started writing down stories about her because I didn't want to forget all of the wonderful things that
They're so
we
impactful
shared.
in our lives, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It
No,
seems
they do.
cathartic too.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
To really.
Yeah.
I was talking to my brother who just lost his dog. I've just lost one of my pups as well, and I think just the art of, just the act of writing some of those stories is so great. So please go on.
Keeps their memory
Yes,
alive.
it does. Yeah.
And at the time, I had started doing more writing, and so I was writing. I had posted some articles on Elephant Journal, which is an online platform.
Okay, yeah.
And I posted an article, the top 10 lessons that I learned from my shelter dog. Oh. And it received a lot of great feedback and encouragement from people who, of course, you know, had their own experiences with their own dogs. And so I kept writing, and before I knew it, I had 40 life lessons that I had learned from Ella.
Wow.
And I decided to tell the story from her point of view because the reason it's called From the Shelter Dog Who Became Queen was one of her, she had many nicknames, but one of, I think, her favorite nicknames was Queen because she definitely was the queen of the household. And so I wrote the book from her perspective, and it's 40 life lessons that I learned from her.
That's incredible.
And published that last year, and then I just published
show everybody,
the companion journal to the book. So it gives a prompt for each of the life lessons to help you relate back to your own life what that lesson might mean for you. So it just, I think it helps people get more value from the book of being able to see, you know, how these lessons relate for them.
Absolutely.
I've been reading it at night, just before I go to bed, because it just kind of gives me a little, you know, something nice to kind of go to sleep with each night. But all of her lessons, she was a very wise dog.
She was a very wise dog.
I love the dedication in here too, Carrie, from you to Ella, from Ella to you. Can you kind of share a little? And she calls you Mom.
Yes.
In the book.
Yes, I'm Mom in the book.
Can you kind of share a little bit more about that as well?
Ella was a very unique dog. She was definitely, and I grew up with animals, so I've had dogs as part of our family since I was born. And Ella was definitely a very special soul. I knew the minute I met her that she was going to be my sidekick, my soulmate, and she truly was. And she was very unique. She was very wise, and also, I think, very different than some dogs. You know, she had her own personality, and you know, again, she just she was a great sidekick for that part of my life. She was up for anything, and we did a lot of great things together. And I'm sure I would have still done a lot of great things had Ella not been by my side. But it was all better because we got to do it together.
Sweeter. Absolutely, definitely.
Your sidekick, or maybe she thought you were her sidekick. I don't know.
Yeah, it might have been the reverse.
You did a lot of hikes. You did a lot of like traveling.
Yeah, we did a lot of road trips, and even when she was struggling with her health issues, by her last 6 months or so, she required a cart or wheels to help her get around. And we did a road trip to the Grand Canyon, and she walked all around the rim trail in her wheels, very proud, and loved every minute of it. So she definitely taught me to appreciate life. And and take the time to enjoy the vistas along the journey.
That's
And
awesome.
she was a rescue,
She
right?
was, yes.
We are all three
All
advocates
big
of rescues.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, nope.
So
I
there's
totally
all kinds
agree.
of good rescues out there for sure.
Amazing. And even if you want, like if you're looking for that name brand dog, there are so many rescues out there with those dogs as well,
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you have a specific breed of dog that you really love, look for those
Chances
rescues.
are there's a rescue, right?
Absolutely. They have them out there, and you will never find, I think, to your point, I grew up with dogs my whole life, and we did have a couple of dogs that we had gotten from breeders, and our relationship with them was, we got them when they were puppies, and it's a different kind of relationship. Rescue dogs imprint on you in a different way because they know you rescued them.
That's a good word,
right?
imprint.
Yeah, they really do. They
yeah.
know you rescued them, and they rescue you, and
yeah.
you will never find a more loyal animal than a rescue. I mean, they
I would
just
agree.
are amazing. So, yeah.
I would agree.
Nope. So we are strong advocates of the
Yes.
rescue. Absolutely.
So much for putting this out into the world, and I'm really excited to get
the companion guide. I
journal.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll start using that at night too.
Yeah,
I think
it was a
that's gonna
great
be
way to
great.
do. I love that. What kind of advice would you give? Because for you, Carrie, you were already a healthy person. You were already exercising. My guess is you probably had a reasonably good diet. If you're an athlete, you generally eat pretty good. But what advice would you give for people who maybe aren't in that situation? Like, how do they get started on that journey? Because I do think we allow life to get in our way, and we make a lot of excuses for why we can't do it.
Simple steps that we
Yeah,
can.
simple
Because I
steps
know
are
I
always
get
good.
overwhelmed.
Me
with
too,
stuff.
yeah. Because I'm
Right,
like,
and I
gotta
was-
change it
Yeah.
all, right?
Yeah,
That's it.
Change my world.
And it is all about the simple, the
Okay.
small steps.
Love that.
Because once you have success with something,
Yeah.
you're more motivated to keep
So
going. But if
true.
you want to change everything all at once,
Yeah.
you're not as likely to have success with that, and then you
Yes.
get disappointed, and then the changes don't happen. So starting small, and there are small things that you can do. I'd say one in particular for just being more mindful and managing stress is stopping and taking a few deep breaths. It's a very simple thing that you can be done in the moment. If you
I do love
go into
breathing.
that
We
fight or
it's
flight.
underestimated, right? I mean,
Yeah.
And
but
everybody's
so
like,
valuable.
what? We all breathe.
I know, but we don't. We don't really
We don't.
breathe, right?
What's the method that you use, Carrie?
Well, there's a lot of different things that you can do, but one of the ones that is really helpful, especially when you're feeling stressed and you want to just bring your body back into a state
Yes.
of calm, is it's the 4-2-7 breath. So you inhale to a count of 4, hold your breath for 2 seconds, and then exhale for 7 seconds. Because
I have a hard time with exhaling that long. It's hard to do it.
Why? And I've heard you're supposed to exhale longer. And
Yeah,
why
why?
is that?
So your exhale breath is really what helps your body go back to the parasympathetic nervous system. So get out of that fight or flight
Okay, yeah.
reaction.
Really good.
Yeah.
So, and if, even if you can't do the 7 seconds, you don't want the breath exercise to be stressful.
Right.
So start with what you can do and what
Yeah.
feels comfortable and helps you relax. And even
awesome.
sometimes even just doing that for 1 minute can make the difference and, help your body and your mind come back to that natural state. I mean, really our parasympathetic nervous system is our natural state, but a lot of us stay in this fight or flight all the time because we have exactly.
Yeah,
And
which
that's
is
what
crazy
leads-
because fight or flight is dates way back from the beginning of
Caveman.
mankind, right? Yeah. When
Tigers are chasing.
legit. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. It's like we don't have any tiger. You hope we don't have any tigers chasing us. But we do naturally want to move into this fight or flight. And you're right. I think most people do kind of live in this constant state of fight or flight, like they can't ever find that place of center and relaxation.
And your body reacts the same whether it's a real threat or a perceived threat.
Interesting.
So if you're worried about something happening, your body can go into that state even if that thing doesn't even happen.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
That's very interesting. I heard someone talking recently on a podcast about when he makes coffee in the mornings, for the 5 minutes where the coffee is brewing, he does a couple of push-ups and a couple of sit-ups and things like that. So should we like kind of try and find ways to
Yeah, how do we incorporate that movement,
yeah,
that
like you were saying, it's
exercise?
just like 5 minutes a day.
Yeah,
And I was like,
exactly.
really?
Just moving your body in some way. And
Okay.
you don't have to, and again, it doesn't have to be this big thing of like, I need to do this for an hour.
Yeah.
It could be going for a 10 or 15-minute walk after lunch, or,
that.
taking a break from your desk and doing a couple stretches or some strength work. It can be in 10-minute increments. But the other thing I always recommend to people is find things that you like to do. Find ways that you like
Great
to move your body.
advice.
I always
Yeah.
dance when I'm making dinner because I
Yeah,
love to dance.
there you go.
awesome.
And dancing makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And so it's something I do every day, and I am moving my
such a
body.
cool
I like that.
idea.
Yeah.
And it's just while I'm making dinner, so it doesn't take any extra
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a
Love
really
that.
good point. The coffee guy,
Yeah.
what you were just sharing with us too, Carrie, is that it is sometimes just those little things, and they don't have to take extra time. Because I think that's what we also do. We stress ourselves out because it's like, oh, now I got to
Yeah.
schedule this exercise.
And I have to wear a cute
and-
outfit.
Exactly. Yes, I got to have the right clothes, right
are
shoes.
you kidding?
It is. It's so true. Yeah. No, it is so true that we do that to ourselves. And I think women are really bad about doing that
absolutely.
because it's all about it. We forget about the reason why we're doing it, and we get caught up in all of the
That's a
other
good
stuff,
point.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is very true. Well, and I think I heard too, Carrie, they do say like you should move at least 30 minutes every day, but it doesn't mean 30 consecutive minutes. You could do those 10-minute increments
bursts.
and just little bursts of just anything. You do those squats,
Yeah.
stand up and do some squats for 10 minutes or little things like that are all really important and not hard to incorporate into our daily lives, right?
Exactly. I even have a little post-it on my monitor, my computer monitor, of different things that you can do for a couple minutes when you're taking a break from. So it's
Oh, I love
squats
that.
or
Yeah.
a stretch or some push-ups. Just little
Yeah,
things
just
that you
something
can do.
to
Just a
move.
reminder, of
Yeah,
like I can do
no.
this when
See something visual.
Yeah. Yeah, just that. I love that. Now, talk a little bit about diet because I know that's another one that comes up is just, and you hear it all the time is that it's too expensive to eat healthy. So
You
talk
do
a
hear
little
that.
bit. Yeah, you
Yeah.
hear like it's, and I'm always curious about that a little bit, but I'm also like you transitioned to a plant-based diet. Talk a little bit about that and this whole misconception that it's just so expensive to eat healthy.
And also on top of that, there's so many different, here's how you should eat.
Oh my
Like,
goodness, yes.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So-
do, yeah.
And I think boiling it down to what is one thing that is generally good for everyone. And
Yeah.
I'd say for us in the United States, getting more fiber
Right.
and eating more leafy greens
Yeah.
are the things that can help most anyone, because most of us are not
true.
getting enough of those two
And that
things.
helps with diabetes if you have
Exactly.
type 2. I mean, that there's a lot of things that factors into to really
Yeah.
help with that. It's just like overall good health, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think people, and to your point, people think it's expensive to
Yeah.
eat healthier. But really, a lot of whole foods, which are what we should be eating over ultra processed
One
foods,
ingredient
Right.
food,
are,
right?
you can get them in bulk at the grocery store in
Right.
the bins, and they're not expensive if
Yeah.
you are getting, just say millet as an example, as
Sure.
a grain that maybe people haven't tried.
Yeah.
That's not expensive to do,
Yeah.
or legumes, beans,
Yeah.
Very
things
good
like that.
point. Yeah.
And there's a great resource out there from Environmental Working Group. They put out every year the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And so a lot of people think if you're buying fruits and vegetables, you have to buy organic, which are more expensive.
Right.
But the beauty of these lists is it will tell you the things that you should buy organic because
Okay.
there's either a lot of pesticides used in growing them,
Right.
or they don't have a protective outer layer.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Think of a strawberry.
Yeah.
You're eating the strawberry. There's no.
Yeah, that's
Not
right.
like a
Yeah, there
banana
is
that
nothing to
has
peel
a
up or
cover
something.
avocado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So
Okay.
the Clean 15, on the other hand, are things that either don't require a lot of pesticides in growing, or they have some sort of protective covering, like an avocado or an onion.
Yeah.
Where you can buy those conventional and
Love that.
So you don't feel like you have to run out and buy everything organic.
Right.
Say that website again, and we'll post it as well.
Yeah, it's called Environmental Working Group.
Okay.
I think their website is just ewg.org, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But
Okay.
yeah,
In the
every
show
year
notes.
it's the Clean 15 and the Dirty
Dirty
Dozen.
Dozen.
I like
That's
that.
easy to remember, huh?
Yeah. Well, and
That
I think
works
we've,
for me.
that works for me. I know that I
to
could actually
remember.
figure out exactly. When I think too, we've overcomplicated
That's right.
eating too, right? Like, because I think when I was a kid, my mom, she just portion controlled. I'm sure she had no idea she was
had no
portion
money,
controlling.
so
we
she
had no
portion
money,
controlled,
so she
yeah.
portion controlled exactly. She made enough food for us to eat, and
That's right.
it was the right portion. We always had, some type of a green, like you said, like we always had a salad. We had a vegetable, we had a starch, and we had a protein, and every single meal was that way. And we also had water at the table, and most of the time we actually didn't even drink with our meal. It was we drank after our meal. Like you just didn't bring drinks to the table.
Your mom was
type of
very
thing.
smart.
She had no idea how smart she was, and I look back and it was so simple. As I've gotten older, I feel like it's
complicated.
overwhelming to me, like to think about meal planning and that sort of stuff. It feels so hard, and it's not. But we've overcomplicated, and to your point, a lot of that is media and press and diets and this and systems and all of that
And the
sort
big
of
food
stuff,
companies,
right?
they
And
want
the
you
big
to buy their
yes,
products.
they do.
So
yeah,
they, throw these labels on the box. And
Yeah.
this
Well,
is
a lot of
healthy,
fear-based
a lot of
as
that
well. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't do this, here's what's going to happen.
No,
and
Whereas
It's so
to your
true.
point, Linda, we intuitively know what the good
We
things are
do.
to eat.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
it gets confusing
It
because
does.
they want us to be confused.
It's very true.
to buy their products. And Big Food also manufactures food to taste good and to be addictive.
That's true.
So there's a reason why you can't eat just one chip.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yes, yeah.
They're designed to be that way.
Right, that is so true.
Well,
no.
and it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier too, Carrie, which is listen to your body.
Yes.
What does your body need? I have the lady who does my hair is like, after I get done here today, I think my body needs some salmon, maybe a little bit of avocado. And I'm like, wow, you're really in tune with your body. Yeah. So I think it goes back to that, your health and when you're not feeling well.
Yeah. Right? No, it makes a big difference.
Interesting.
Carrie, it has been so great having you here for a number of reasons. One, it has been wonderful to see you again after all these years and to connect with you. It's also fantastic, all the amazing things that you've been doing. I've been following you for a long time, but didn't really understand the full depth and breadth of all of the things that you've been up to. So that was fun too, just to catch up and hear. Plus, you've shared some, oh my goodness, congratulations for sure. But you've just shared some incredible things with all of our listeners out there. And we're going to post how to get in touch with Carrie. We're going to show you where you can get her book. When is the companion guide out? Is it available now?
It is available
all right,
now,
so we're going to put that out there as well.
Awesome.
And then also we'll put some links to, we'll do the Dirty Dozen. We'll do that. And then just some reminders, like the American Heart Association has some really amazing resources out there. So we'll put some other links out just so, keep it simple, right? That we live by the KISS principle, they say. So, so let's do that. And gosh, so good I'm so glad I got to be in the studio with you today too.
It's fun to actually get to see you every
It is
so
really
often.
fun to see you as well.
Thank you.
And Carrie, thank you for coming down and spending time with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's been really great to see you both in person.
Oh, thank you. Well, thanks to all of our listeners. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as
share
we
it
did.
with somebody.
Yes,
this is
that's
a good
right.
one
This
to
is
share.
a great one. Share it, tag it.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. No, this is a really good one. I think lots of great lessons in this one. So, yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the HR Her Resources podcast. We're so happy to have you with us on this journey. Music and production by Logan Misigatis of LJM Productions. We'd also like to thank our intern, Lauren Vanis, for creating our logo and supporting our social media postings. If you'd like to connect with Logan or Lauren, you can find their information in the show notes. If you found value in our discussion and think someone else might as well, please follow, subscribe to our LinkedIn, and share with a friend. Until our next episode, please take care and continue to support one another.